of who they've been before and who they are now and who they're going to become. And this is what in Catholicism is called teleological destination, that we're moving toward a particular destination with ourselves, that there's a certain aspect of it that's universal for all human beings, the attainment of enlightenment, but it's going to be that we're going to crystallize in slightly different forms to do different things. And so this is a real divine mystery. Every human being holds this divine mystery, and to see what's held within it. It also leads us to actually perceive the hidden spirit and spiritual beings working through all the forces of nature. So, give you some idea of the observation of life forces and growth and decay. Then, of course, the study of spiritual science we talked about before is fundamental, because we have to put down those concepts that allow us to logically understand how things fit together. Now, as we're studying things, we have a particular practice that we do. It's called the dissolving practice. The dissolving practice is an alchemical way to read spiritual text, so that if you're reading a text from any spiritual tradition, what you're actually reading as words on the page was the attempt of someone to crystallize into written language a direct spiritual experience that they had. The only way to get to the core of what they're trying to tell you without getting caught up in a fundamentalist literalist trap is to actually regain the experience they had they're trying to communicate through the words. That means the words have to be dissolved into a direct inner spiritual experience. And so it's a type of meditative reading. And this is very important. And it's part of a whole alchemical process that we go through in consciousness. So once we can dissolve the spiritual text into the original experience, it opens up a great world for us and is absolutely vital for going to deeper parts of spiritual teachings that have been preserved. Now this is also connected to the next stage, which is something called the Michaelic Yoga. And we're going to wind up here in just a second, but I think it's worth taking time to try to flesh out what is it that the Rosicrucians call Michaelic Yoga. What would be a yoga that you would do with the Archangel Michael? Who is the Archangel Michael? We mentioned before that the name Archangel Michael means who is as God. It is the being at the level of the archangelic hierarchy, which is a spiritual group of beings 2 stages above the human race at the current point. Humans, angels, archangels, archai, etc. The way we described in the classical Kabbalistic and Western teachings. All the Western tradition follows that particular model. That the Archangel Michael is the highest of the archangels. He has the same qualities as the Godhead for functioning at the archangelic level. And Archangel Michael is also known as the regent of the cosmic intelligence. That means the way that the Godhead sees the big picture for how things fit together, Archangel Michael has that capacity at the archangelic level. He sees how things fit together. If you go into the deeper waters of this, you find these medieval texts about the 7 archangels that guide different periods of time. The 7 different archangels, because they have a rulership of about 300 years each, during each part of the Platonic cycle, where we move through the constellations. Each constellation we move through in the precession of the equinox takes 2,160 years. We're not going to go into all the details of that, but let's just say that Michael is one of these archangels that helps to guide time. And he's the one that has the picture of how it all fits together. So this Michaelic Yoga is a type of internal exercise that's related to the consciousness of Archangel Michael. Steiner describes it as talking about the way that initiation has changed over time. In earlier times, we would have a guru give us particular types of exercises, and they would guide and observe every part of our activity, because we couldn't make choices for ourselves. We don't have enough context. We don't know enough. We don't see enough. But now we're at the point that we're doing this for ourselves. So with this particular process, what we have is that in the ancient schools, they taught a particular type of breathing. And the way they breathed at that time was to actually make themselves more conscious by being conscious of the breath in and out. So there's a particular yoga of the inhale of the breath and of the exhale of the breath. And what Steiner is basically saying with the Michaelic Yoga is that for the Rosicrucian, we have the same inhale and exhale, but now it's done in pure consciousness. It's not done with the breath per se. So when we inhale, in a sense, the observation of the physical world, then that's what we would call a perception. I perceive something in the physical world. Whatever I see, if I'm observing nature or a human being, whatever it is, I'm breathing in that perception. And that's a completely receptive activity. If I don't have a receptive soul, I can't do it. But we breathe that in, and we hold the perception inside of us. It might be the movement of a child. It might be the growth of a flower. It might be whatever it is. And then we breathe out the concept. A concept is where now I can see inside what I have perceived, the spirit inside of it. So when we say that, I have a concept about this or that, we tend to deal with the idea of a concept as something very intellectual and abstract. Oh, that's all just a bunch of concepts. But a true concept is a thought form from the mind of God. A true concept is a direct perception of spirit within matter. And that's why it's called a concept. The term conception means birth. And a concept is a birth inside of the human mind of the direct perception of spirit working in the world. And so instead of breathing in and breathing out, we're breathing in the perception of the world receptively, and then we're actively breathing out the concept, where now I have perceived the spirit in the world. This is extremely significant. So what I want to connect this with then is when we talked about this particular process where we made this movement of manifestation, there was this descent from the spiritual world. Clairvoyant became then a loss of clairvoyance, became more and more individual with our awareness, and pulled back up. There's a process here where all of creation goes through cycles of crystallization and dissolving. That's what alchemy is all about. Solve et coagula. It dissolves and it crystallizes. And so with this crystallization process, in time, it will dissolve again. Everything that has moved from spirit here into the physical world has the spirit within it, but in a sense it's trapped in matter. And many different traditions talk about this. And it's important for human beings because every being in the world has a function. If you study all the biological beings of the world, the worms, the animals, whatever it might be, they all perform a function in the world. They all have a quality in the world. And the human being is, in a sense, the crown of creation. We're the ones that have the fullest, most awakened microcosm of the macrocosm. But that's not a privilege, that's a responsibility. Because everything is consciousness, and everything comes from the consciousness of the mind of God. What this means is that when we can develop the mind of God inside of us, because it's now moved through the process of crystallizing into matter, our being able to do the Michaelic yoga, to breathe in the percept of the physicality and breathe out the concept of now seeing and recognizing the spirit within the matter, this actually performs the function that the Godhead performed of moving it from here to here. The activity of the human race moves it from here back to here. It's our activity of consciousness in perceiving the spirit in matter that links the mental concept that we have back to the mind of God and brings the ascent wave back up. Now, this is something I just want to say one other quick thing about, because we talk a lot today about ascension, and ascension is absolutely fundamental in spiritual development. But within Rosicrucianism, they have a very clear difference between what they call Luciferic ascension and Christic Ascension, or it could also be called Michaelic Ascension. And without spending much time on it, the upshot of it is that Luciferic Ascension is basically the idea that I don't like to be here, and I'm going to get out of here as quickly as possible. And I'm going to basically deny the things of the world. I'm not going to continue to work with all the processes of the world or try to work in the normal processes of society, etc. And I'm just going to work on myself, and I'm going to try to separate and get out of here as quickly as possible. That's different from the Christic form of ascension, which is actually to go as deeply as possible into the experiences of the physical world, because by doing so, we develop strengths that we can't develop if we pull out too quickly. It's like if I tried to get a caterpillar that's in the cocoon and cut it out, I'm just going to have a mess. I'm not going to have a butterfly. There's a whole thing about going into the cocoon of the physical world and the experiences we have here that shape us. They are the alchemical experiences that we're meant to have here, the stuff we don't like going through. They actually shape us in a particular way. And so this Christic Ascension is like the model scene with the life of Christ, that the Christ went through this entire process all the way to crucifixion, and then the descent into hell, and then the resurrection, etc., as this model, this passion play of going all the way down to complete union with the earth, and then coming back. And at that point, basically said, I will be with you always until the end of days. And that is mirrored in other traditions like the Buddhists, where the Buddhists once again say things in the Bodhisattva vow, like, I will continue to incarnate until all sentient beings attain enlightenment. It's the exact same spiritual impulse. And so for us, it's the thing of grasping the nature of the physical world and working with it deeply and helping every being in the physical world and pulling it up on the pathway of ascension instead of saying,